This is Grade 6, Eureka, Module 3, Lesson 4. And the title of this one is Numbers Having an Opposite. So some of this you may already have worked on in IXL. However, we're going to review it again so that you hopefully understand it even more. So each non-zero integer has an opposite. Denoted just means that it's written as the opposite of A, or negative A. Negative A and A are opposites if they are on the opposite sides of 0 and the same distance from 0 on the number line. So let's go down to example 1 so I can show you what that means. Locate the number 8 and its opposite on the number line, and then explain how they're related to 0. That's what I'm going to do for you. So 8 is right here. If we want to find the opposite of 8, the first thing we need to do, because we're looking at opposite sides of 0 and the distance between 8 and 0, so we're going to hop on over to 0. I'm going to do that by just hopping back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So from 8 to 0 is 8 spaces, 8 hops, 8 numbers, whatever you want to say. To find the opposite, we have to go on the opposite side, in the opposite direction, and do the same number of hops. So we have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That will bring us to negative 8. So the distance from 0 to negative 8 is 8 more steps, but they're negative because they're on the left-hand side of 0. So to find the opposite of a number, we all know this already, it's just the number with the opposite sign. So finding the opposite of 8, it's negative 8. All right, I'm pretty sure we're all comfortable with that already. So this case, exercise 2 says to locate and label the opposites of the numbers on the number line. You can't put on the number line because you don't have one in front of you. However, you can write the correct integer. So if we want to find the opposite of 9, the opposite of 9 would be negative 9. And the opposite of negative 2 would be positive 2. And the opposite of positive 4 would be negative 4. And the opposite of negative 7 would be positive 7. Okay, moving on. Now we're asked to write an integer that represents the opposite of each situation. And then we also need to explain what the 0 means in each situation. So that's where it gets kind of tricky. All right, so the first one, A, if we're going to write the integer, A is 100 feet above sea level. Well, we know that above means positive. So if we're going 100 feet above sea level, that's going to be positive 100. However, that's not the answer, because we need to write the integer that represents the opposite of this situation. So the opposite of 100 is negative 100, and that's the correct answer for A. Okay? The last thing they asked us to do is to explain what 0 means in the situation. So if we're talking about 100 feet above sea level, or the opposite of that, the 0 we're talking about in this situation is sea level. Okay, so looking at the next one, 32 degrees below 0, if the number is below 0, then it's a negative. And so that would be negative 32. However, they want us to find out the opposite of that. So the opposite of negative 32 is positive 32. And in this case, the 0, so in this case, the 0 represents 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, so the next one is a withdrawal of $25. So a withdrawal of $25, we know that withdrawal means negative. So if we're doing a withdrawal of $25, that's a negative 25 for the integer. But if we're trying to write the opposite of that, then that's not the answer they want. They want a positive 25. And now here's where it gets kind of weird. The 0 in this case is going to represent if you didn't have a withdrawal or anything else. So if you had $165 in your account and you did not withdraw anything, you're still at 165. Your account has not changed. So whenever we're talking about money, we're always going to talk about the 0 being no change in that money, no change in that balance in that account. So if we were to say, if we were to explain what the 0 means in this particular situation, here's how we write it. So 0 represents no change where no withdrawal or deposit has been made. Okay, this one is a little bit long, so we're going to take our time. We will have one like it in the problem set, so you do want to pay close attention to it. So I'm going to read it. Maria decides to take a walk along Central Avenue to purchase a book at the bookstore. On her way, she passes the Furry Friends pet shop and goes in to look for a new leash for her dog. Furry Friends pet shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. She leaves Furry Friends pet shop and walks toward the bookstore to look at some books. After she leaves the bookstore, she heads east for 7 blocks and stops at Ray's pet shop to see if she can find a new leash at a better price. Which location, if any, is the farthest for Maria while she is at the bookstore? And then the next sentence says, determine an appropriate scale and model the situation on the number line below. So that's how we're going to solve it. But let's go back to the question. If we were to underline what the question is, it would be, which location is the farthest for Maria while she's at the bookstore? So that's what the question in this problem is. If we were to say to ourselves, what is the question asking us to find? They're asking us to find the farthest place that either the pet shop or is located from the bookstore. Okay, so we have to start with looking at an appropriate scale right now. An appropriate scale means looking at this number line and determining what numbers each one should be. So if we count, look at the numbers that we were given. Furry Friends Pet Shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. Okay, so those are things we need to know. So we knew that, that's if we were writing this information down, Furry Friends Pet Shop. So Furry Friends is 7 west of the bookshop. Okay, and we know that Ray's Pet Shop is, she heads east for 7 blocks. So Ray's is 7 blocks east of the bookshop. Okay, so now we've listed out our information. And we need to have a place for the bookshop. So we know we're working with the number 7. If we count how many lines are here, we can count 17 lines. And if we wanted to find roughly the middle of that, we would count 8 and then put a 0. Okay, so if you put your 0 here, then you could count 8 to the right, that's positive, and 8 to the left, that's negative. So it doesn't always work that you want to put it in the middle, but for our purposes of what we're doing, it does. So, all right, we've got our scale now. Now we can start to model it. We want Furry Friends to be 7 west of the bookshop and Ray's to be 7 east of the bookshop. So that means we need to make the bookshop right here at 0. Right here. So if you remember, you may not remember, but east and west, west goes over here, this way, and east is over here, to the right. So if we're making the Furry Friends 7 west, then that would make the Furry Friends towards the west over here a -7. This would be the furry friends. Just going to call it FF. And then if we wanted rays to be the east, 7 east would be to the right of 0. So we'll make rays +7, and that's here. So there's Ray's Pet Shop. So we've got our model made right now. So let's go back to the question. Which location, if any, is the farthest from Maria while she's at the bookstore? So if Maria's here, is she farther away, is Ray's farther away from her, or is Furry Friends farther away from her? Okay, so we answered our question by saying the pet stores are the same distance from Maria, who is at the bookstore. However, if we look back down here, we've got to explain our answer. So they've added some more stuff that we need to do. Then they ask, what does 0 represent in this situation? Well, looking at our model, we can see that 0 represents the bookshop. So that's an easy one. But we have to explain why it is that we've put this answer here. And so let me show you what that explanation would look like. So a good explanation could just talk about the distance and then the direction. So we would say they are 7 blocks away, but in opposite directions. That talks about the distance and then the direction. And then in this example, our 0 represents the bookstore. So we've answered all the questions now. We're good. Okay, next one. Read each situation carefully and then answer the question. On a number line, locate and label a credit of $15 and a debit for the same amount from a bank. What does 0 represent in this situation? Notice that we're doing two things here. We're locating and labeling, and then our question that we have to answer is, what does 0 represent in this situation? That's going to be a popular question that we want to be familiar with and know how to answer. Okay, so first and foremost, I will go ahead and show you the best way of doing this. Is count the lines, figure out what the middle line is, and put your 0 there. As I said before, it doesn't always have to be in the middle, but when we're talking about opposite numbers, we probably want to make it about the same. Since there are only 3 lines here, our increments should probably be in 5. So 5, 10, 15, and -5, -10, -15. So the next thing we need to do is locate and label a credit of 15 and then a debit. So a credit means it's positive on the positive side, and a debit means on the negative side. So a credit of $15 would be right here, and then a debit of $15 would be on the negative side. Okay, here's where the question comes in. What does a 0 represent in this situation? So remember what we're talking about. It's a credit and a debit, and it's about a bank account. So what would the 0 be? We've already talked about it once. What would the 0 represent? Okay, remember that 0 represents no change in the balance at all. Okay, not a credit or a debit. Any one of those will work. So if we have this, and I might be redundant, we can draw a number line right above, going vertical, even though they've given us a horizontal one. So by taking a vertical number line, we can put our -20 below our 0, our +20 above our 0. And then all we have to do is take that number line and turn it so that it looks horizontal. In which case we would then take this. We have 2 lines here, so we would put a +10 and a +20. And to the left of it, we would do -10 and -20. And so then if we wanted to do 20 degrees below 0, that would be -20, same as it would be if we did it over here. And if we wanted to do 20 degrees above 0, that would be on the right of 0, just like it would be above 0 here. So now we need to say, what does 0 represent in this situation? And so in this situation, 0 is just basically 0 degrees Celsius. Doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. So So as you can see, 0 represents 0 degrees Celsius. Number 6 says, a proton represents a positive charge, and write an integer to represent 5 protons. An electron represents a negative charge, and we're to write an integer that represents 3 electrons. Alright, so first and foremost, you may or may not have talked about this in science, and honestly it doesn't matter because they're giving us the information that we need. A proton is positive. So if we have 5 protons, so 5 protons, and if we need to write that as an integer, it's just positive 5 because they're positive. So an electron is negative, and so if we write an integer to represent 3 electrons, equals a negative 3 because it's a negative charge. So don't get caught up sometimes if you'd like, I've never heard of this before. They give you the information so that you will still know how to do it. Okay, so for this next exercise, it's the first problem. It is find the opposite of each number and describe its location on the number line. So we're not just finding the opposite, we also have to say whether it's to the left or to the right of a number. Okay? I also want us to include if it's above or below. So I'll explain what I mean. The first one, A, says negative 5. So if we're writing negative 5, so what we would write is the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5, and that's located 5 units to the right of 0 or above if it was a horizontal number line. So you're gonna write that down. So for B, you're gonna do 10, the opposite of 10, and where would that be located on the number line if it was horizontal or vertical? Just mimicking kind of what I wrote here. Okay, hopefully you wrote the opposite of 10 is negative 10, which is 10 units to the left of 0 or below 0. Okay, letter C says negative 3. So what is the opposite of negative 3 and where is it located? Okay, so the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, which is 3 units to the right of 0, also located above the 0 if it was vertical. Letter D talks about 15. What is the opposite of 15 and where is it located? Okay, hopefully you wrote the opposite of 15 is negative 15, which is located to the left of 0 or below 0 on the horizontal or on the vertical number line. All right, let's move on. Write the opposite of each number and label the points on the number line. Again, obviously you cannot label the points on a number line, but I left the number line in so that you can use it to figure it out. So all we have to do is write what the opposite of each one is. A says, what is the opposite of 9? Okay, that one is negative 9. What is the opposite of negative 4? That is positive 4. What is the opposite of negative 7? That is positive 7. What is the opposite of 0? Let's see if you can remember this. 0 has no opposite. It is always going to be 0. Okay? The opposite of positive 2. Negative 2. All right, those were pretty easy, I hope. Now, let's talk a little bit more about what these all mean. So we're going to look at the example. Write the integer, again we're writing integers, that represents the opposite of each real-world situation. We're going to write it in words, and then write the meaning of the opposite. That's going to be different. So we have to write the opposite, and then the meaning of the opposite. Okay? So let's start with A. A says an atom's positive charge of 7. So the opposite, first off, that we would be -7, because the opposite of positive is negative. And then what that means is that the atom's negative charge of 7. Okay? You may not have known atoms, that's why I did that one for you. But the next ones you should be able to do, no problem. Okay. So, a deposit of $25. What is the opposite integer? We know that the regular integer, a deposit of $25, is 25. So you write what the opposite is, and then what does it mean? Okay, so the opposite of a deposit would be a withdrawal, and the opposite of positive 25 is -25. So we would write -25, and then a withdrawal of, and then it's a real life situation. We're not talking about integers in the second part, so you would write the $ of $25. Okay, so try C. 3,500 feet below sea level. What's the opposite of that? Okay, so 3,500 feet below sea level would be -3,500 feet. However, the opposite of that is positive 3,500 feet, positive 3,500, sorry, which would be the integer, and 3,500 feet above sea level would be the opposite of being below sea level. Okay, D says a rise of 45 degrees Celsius. So we're not talking about where it's at on the number line. We're talking about just what the word rise means. A rise of 45 degrees Celsius, and what would be the opposite integer, and then what would be the opposite real life situation. So the correct answer would be, the rise would be a positive 45. So the opposite integer would be -45. And then the opposite of rise is decrease or lower or anything like that. Any word that means the same thing is fine too, of 45 degrees Celsius. All right, last one. A loss of 13 pounds. What's the opposite integer? And what does the opposite life part of it mean? Okay, hopefully you wrote and realized that a loss would have been a -13. They wanted the opposite of that, so that would be positive 13. And the opposite of losing would be gaining or increasing, or any one of those words that helps. That's the opposite of losing. And so a gain of 13 pounds. All right, very good. Number 4 says, on a number line, locate and label a credit of $38 and a debit of the same amount, a debit of $38 from a bank account. And then what does 0 represent in this situation? You'll remember that's from one of the examples we just did a few minutes ago. So let's take it apart first. We need to know what a credit is. So what we need to do is locate and label. I'll help you do that. And then we have to ask or answer, what does 0 represent in this situation? So a credit of 38, does that go to the right or to the left of 0? Yeah, that integer goes to the right of 0. That's positive 38 because credit is positive. And a debit goes to the left of 0 because that's a negative. Okay, so we have that. Now, what does 0 represent in this situation? We've talked about it 2 other times. Let's see if you can remember what this means. Well, 0 represents no change in the balance, no change in the account. Any one of those will work. For what does 0 represent? Very good. Okay, there's one more and then we're done. On a number line, locate and label 40 degrees below 0 and 40 degrees Celsius above 0. And what does 0 represent in this situation? So we need to locate and label again. And then we need to answer the question, what does 0 represent in this situation? When you're giving something with temperature, I've said before, it's always good to just write really quick, a number line like that, a vertical number line, because that's what we're used to with temperature. And then we can just simply turn it sideways in our mind, even on paper, and turn it sideways. So we're given 5 lines, so we can put our 0 in the middle since we're trying to do a below and above. And if we put a 0 in the middle of our line here, we can do below and above here. So 40 degrees below would be located here, and that's usually listed as -40. And 40 degrees above, we should remember, is positive, so that goes up top as a positive. That now we know that on a number line where to put it. So if we make this 20 and 40, then we can make this one -20 and -40. They usually make it easy for us when we're trying to figure out what increments to make them. So these were increments of 20. So now we can clearly see that 40 below would be -40, and so that belongs over here, and 40 above is +40. So now we've done the first part. We've located and labeled. Now, what does 0 represent in this situation? What did we talk about before when we had this situation? What does 0 represent? Well, hopefully you remember that 0 represents 0 degrees Celsius. And if you didn't know how to spell Celsius, that's fine if you just put the capital C. All right, and that concludes Lesson 4, Module 3. Nice work.